All right, diving in some seriously interesting stuff today. Ghosts.
Ghosts, yes.
You sent over a treasure trove of material on this.
Yeah.
Academic papers, cultural comparisons, even some psychology notes. This
It's
is
a lot, yeah.
looks like you've been doing some digging. So, are we going to find out if ghosts are real?
Well, I don't know about that, but what we're really going to do is unpack what we actually know about ghosts.
Okay.
And perhaps more importantly, why this idea of ghosts continues to fascinate us.
I'm intrigued, but I've got to be honest, some of the research you've included seems, I don't know, pretty skeptical. Like, is science just not ready to believe in Casper?
It's not so much about belief, it's
Yeah.
it's more about evidence.
Oh,
Science loves a good mystery,
right.
but it demands, a certain level of rigor,
Right.
right? Think about how science approaches something unknown.
Yeah.
Right? It starts with observation, then you try to form a testable hypothesis, and then finally gather evidence through experiments.
Which is kind of tricky with ghosts because you can't exactly put them in a lab.
Precisely. And that's where things get complicated for parapsychology.
Parapsychology.
Yeah, the field that attempts to study paranormal phenomena.
Okay.
And it often faces an uphill battle for acceptance within mainstream science.
Because it's dealing with things that are difficult, if not impossible, to measure objectively.
Exactly. How do you design a foolproof experiment to study something that might be influenced by, I don't know, personal beliefs, environmental factors, or even just our own imaginations? It's a tall order.
So it's not that scientists are like totally dismissing the possibility of ghosts, but they're just looking for a more, I don't know, convincing explanation, something they can really sink their teeth into.
Right, they're looking for that smoking gun.
A smoking gun.
Or I guess I should say that smoking ghost.
Okay.
Clear, replicable evidence.
Gotcha.
And until then, there will always be a degree of skepticism.
Fair enough. But that doesn't really explain why so many people throughout history and across cultures have these experiences or believe they do. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you've got material here about EMF fluctuations, infrasound, even mold being linked to ghostly encounters.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
Now that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about EMF, or electromagnetic fields, for a moment, right?
Yeah.
They're all around us, generated by everything from electrical appliances to the wiring in our homes.
So not necessarily proof of a haunting.
Not quite. While some people believe that ghosts can manipulate EMF,
Okay.
it's more likely that what people are experiencing are fluctuations caused by perfectly normal things, like faulty wiring or changes in electrical currents.
Okay, so if it's not actually ghosts messing with the lights, what's going on? Why do people feel uneasy or even sense a presence in these situations?
Because our brains are incredible pattern-seeking machines.
Okay.
We're constantly always trying to make sense of the world around us.
Right.
And sometimes we find patterns where none actually exist.
So we're essentially connecting the dots in the dark.
Yeah.
And sometimes those dots form the shape of a ghost.
Ex-
Even if it's just our mind playing tricks on us.
Precisely. We might hear a creak in an old house,
Right.
feel a cold spot,
Yeah.
and suddenly our brains are like weaving a ghost story.
Automatically go to the spoopy stuff.
But the key thing to remember here
Yeah.
is that even if the cause is mundane,
Okay.
the feeling is real.
Right.
That sense of unease,
Yeah.
that feeling of being watched, that's a physiological response.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those responses can be triggered by things we aren't even consciously aware of.
Okay, so like what? Give me some examples.
We'll take infrasound, for example.
Infrasound.
Yeah, it's a type of sound wave that's, below the range of human hearing,
Okay.
but our bodies can still detect it.
Really?
Yeah, and exposure to infrasound has been linked to some pretty interesting effects.
Interesting how? Like what kind of effects?
Well, think about those times you've been in a place, right? And you feel this sudden chill,
Okay.
a sense of unease, or even like someone was watching you.
Right.
But you couldn't quite put your finger on why,
Yeah.
Some researchers believe that infrasound might be the culprit.
Really?
Yeah, it can trigger feelings of anxiety, disorientation, even hallucinations in some cases.
Okay, now that's just creepy.
Yeah.
So are you saying that like some of these haunted houses people claim to experience, those feelings might just be like low frequency sound waves messing with their heads?
Yeah, it's a possibility. And, it highlights how our senses even those we're not consciously aware of,
Right.
can influence our perception and shape our beliefs.
Yeah.
We might attribute a strange feeling to a ghost when it's actually something entirely explainable,
Right.
though perhaps less romantic.
Less romantic, definitely. But I guess it's also a good reminder that we don't always have the full picture.
Right.
And there might be more to our experiences than meets the eye, or the ear in this case.
Yeah.
But what about the studies I sent over? You mentioned some research on mold. Is that another one of those sensory things where we're misinterpreting something our bodies are picking up on?
It could be you see certain types of mold, like Stachybotrys chartrum,
Stachybotrys what?
churcharm, also known as black mold,
Black mold, okay.
release toxins that can have a real impact on our health.
Okay, so not just bad for your allergies, but potentially messing with your mind too.
Exactly. Exposure to these toxins can cause a range of symptoms, from headaches, dizziness, to more severe neurological effects like hallucinations and confusion.
So someone might think they're being haunted when really they just need to call an exterminator.
It's a real possibility that needs to be considered. And this is why it's so important to approach these experiences with a critical eye
Right.
and consider all possible explanations.
All right, so we've got infrasound, mold, even our own brains playing tricks on us.
Right.
But what about those studies you mentioned, the ones on poltergeists and paranormal experiences in general?
Yeah.
Those seem to dive a little deeper into the possibility of ghosts.
They do. And each one offers a unique perspective on this complex issue.
Sure.
The Duke study, for instance, focused on poltergeist activity.
Poltergeist activity.
Yeah, those unsettling events where objects seem to move on their own, noises occur without explanation.
Right.
And generally spooky things happen.
Poltergeist, so we're talking full-on objects flying across the room, disembodied voices.
Yeah,
That's getting into some spooky territory.
it is.
What did the researchers find?
Well, their findings challenged, kind of, the traditional notion of mischievous spirits, right?
Okay.
They discovered that in many cases, these poltergeist events could be linked to psychological factors.
Psychological.
Yeah, particularly stress and anxiety.
So not a ghost in the machine, but maybe the machine of our own minds going haywire.
Exactly. It seems that in certain situations, our subconscious minds can, manifest these strange phenomena.
Really?
Yeah, as a way of coping with, intense emotions or unresolved conflicts.
Wow, that's wild. So it's like our anxieties are taking on a physical form.
It's a fascinating possibility, isn't it?
It is.
And it speaks to the incredible power of the human mind.
Right.
Now, the Northampton study you shared, that took a broader look at paranormal experiences.
Okay.
They surveyed a large group of people about a range of unexplained encounters.
Like what? What kind of encounter?
Of sensing a presence to witnessing something, truly unexplainable.
And what they find? Were people just lining up to tell their best ghost stories?
You bet. It turns out a surprising number of people reported having had some kind of paranormal experience.
Really?
But while the researchers acknowledged the prevalence of these experiences, they were also careful to point out the subjective nature of such reports.
Meaning?
Well, it's tricky to measure a feeling or a fleeting perception.
Right.
It's one thing to say, I saw something.
Yeah.
It's another to prove it actually happened outside of your own perception.
Right. It's not like you can capture a ghost in a lab and study it under a microscope.
Exactly.
Hey, ghost, fill out this questionnaire.
And that's the challenge with studying, paranormal phenomena.
Right.
It often relies on personal testimony.
Yeah.
Which can be influenced by a variety of factors: beliefs, expectations, cultural influences, even something as simple as, the power of suggestion.
So where does that leave us? I mean, have we made any progress in figuring out if ghosts are real?
I think the real question is, what constitutes real when it comes to these subjective experiences?
That's a good point.
Science might not have all the answers yet,
Sure.
but it's asking the right questions.
Okay.
And perhaps just as importantly, it's forcing us to confront our own biases.
Yeah.
Our need to make sense of the unknown.
Right.
And the very nature of reality itself.
Wow, that's quite a journey for a deep dive on ghosts. So while we might not be able to definitively say yes or no to their existence,
Yeah.
it seems like the exploration itself, reveals something fascinating about us.
Yeah.
Our beliefs, our fears, and our endless curiosity about the world, both seen and unseen.
Absolutely. And perhaps that's the most intriguing takeaway of all.
What's that?
If ghosts are a reflection of our own minds, then understanding them becomes a journey inward, a way of exploring the hidden corners of our own psyches. And who knows what we might find there, right?
Some spooky stuff, I'd imagine. All right. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with me. It's been fascinating, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more spooky stories in the future.